Now look at Part 1.
You'll hear a conversation between Alan and Gianna, the office counsellor of a company. First, you have some time to read questions 1 to 6. Now listen to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 6. What's up, Gianna? You look like you're in bad shape.
Yes, maybe I'll get sick leave from the boss and finally catch up on some sleep. I've barely eaten and slept in days.
Those are warning signs of occupational stress. How are things at work?
Terrible. After all the layoffs lately, the workload is totally overwhelming for everyone that's left. So I spend every waking moment in the office. I'm kept busy all the time.
So you need to take a few minutes break every so often to clear and refresh your mind.
But my boss will complain I'm not hard-working. She's so capricious that you can't predict her reaction sometimes.
Maybe your boss just doesn't have a clue about how much you're really doing. Keep her updated on your achievements and projects. Also insist that she prioritize everything so you can manage your time better.
That's right. I suppose that would help me regain some sense of control, but I'm afraid that she'll take that as a sign of laziness and give me the axe.
So take the initiative and hit the job hunting trail now. You'll be surprised at how many opportunities are out there.
That's encouraging.
Anyway, you should cheer up and get rid of the situation. You know, according to a survey, about 40% of all people find their work very stressful, and 25% develop mental or physical diseases. Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen to the conversation and answer questions 7 to 10.
So serious? I didn't know that. How do the problems start?
You know, they start when conflicts at work induces stress. Your body reacts by flooding the bloodstream with hormones that tense up your muscles and increase your blood pressure. This is meant to save you in a fight or flight situation, but leads to a host of illnesses, ranging from insomnia and headaches to heart attacks, when it occurs regularly over an extended period of time.
What should I do to prevent such things happening?
Well, most occupational stress is attributed to a recognized lack of control. You should act in advance to relieve the problems. For example, you should actively pursue career opportunities rather than quietly worry about getting fired. Of course, you can't control everything, so you need to help your mind and body cope. Keep a journal to release your frustrations, take short walks to calm down, or if necessary, simply take a mental health day.
That is the end of Part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
You'll hear a guide talking to visitors about a tourist attraction. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Roman baths. My name's Amanda, and I'm your guide for today. Before we begin the tour, I'd like to point out that we have child carriers, free of charge of course, for those of you with young children, and I can see that there are 1 or 2 of you here this morning. It might make things a bit easier for you than using a pushchair. If you don't want to carry your coats and bags around with you, there is a cloakroom behind reception where they'll be quite safe. Also, should anyone want to use the bathroom, there's one here in the reception hall, opposite the ticket office, and another one by the shop where we end our tour, right by the exit. Having mentioned the shop, I should tell you that it's full of interesting things for you to remember your visit by. Posters, postcards, replicas of the Gorgon's head, the Haruspex stone, and the statues that you'll be seeing on your tour. There are also games, books and videos for children and other souvenirs. Our first stop will be the terrace, where you will get your first view of the baths. Now the statues that line the terrace here are of Roman emperors, governors of Britain and various military leaders. These aren't from Roman times either. In fact, they were sculpted in 1894, especially for the grand opening of the baths in 1897. But what you can see from here is only a fraction of the whole Roman bath site, which stretches below ground level under the surrounding streets and squares of the town. While we're here on the terrace, getting our first look at the baths, let me fill you in on a bit of the history. This site with its hot springs has long been seen as a sacred place, and the first people to build here were the Celts, and the shrine they built was dedicated to the goddess Sulis. Of course, back in those days they had no way of explaining how hot water came to be bubbling out of the ground, so they believed it to be the work of the gods. When the Romans came, they too built a temple here and dedicated it to their goddess, Minerva. Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20. The bath you can see from here is called the Great Bath. Not very imaginative, I know, but it is the biggest. Impressive, isn't it? At one time it was housed in a huge vaulted hall 40 metres high, which for many people of the period must have been the largest building they'd ever seen in their lives. The bath itself is 1.6 metres deep, ideal for bathing, and has steps leading down to the water on all sides. The niches or alcoves you can see all around the bath would have had benches and possibly small tables for drinks and snacks. Not a bad way to spend your free time, relax, and tell yourself it's all good for your health. Let's move on to our next stop, the Sacred Spring. This is the heart of the site, where the hot water bubbles up from the ground at a temperature of 46 degrees centigrade. The water comes up from a depth of between roughly 2,500 and 4,500 metres, where geothermal energy raises the water temperature to between 64 degrees and 96 degrees. Over 1 million litres of this hot water rise up here every day, and as well as being hot, the water is rich in minerals, and it was thought it would cure various ailments and illnesses. In fact, people came here from all over the Roman Empire to try out its healing powers. Before we take a look at the changing rooms and saunas, which are known as the East Baths, and the plunge pools and heated rooms of the west part of the bathhouse, we'll pass through the site of the temple and the temple courtyard. Here we are. This temple is one of only 2 known classical Roman temples in Britain. The other is the Temple of Claudius at Colchester. This temple is said to date from the late 1st century AD, being built between 60 and 70 AD. But the original temple has been knocked about and added to over the centuries, and what you can see here are just bits of the original temple. Okay, shall we move on?
Now turns to part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3. Part 3.
You'll hear a conversation between students, Anne and David, about gallery marketing. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer the questions 21 to 24.
Anne, we really need to get working on this gallery marketing assignment. We've only got 2 weeks left until the end of the month to set up.
Right, so how about getting started now? We need to work through the instructions.
Well, we must search for one area from tourism industries, like the museum or gallery. There are lots of sites online.
What are they about?
The National Science Museum, the History Museum, the War Museum, the Tate Modern Art Gallery, and so on.
You got more?
We've got plenty.
I've got an idea to find out the best comment. Coming this Friday, we'll get more information at the London Museum because it shows all the visitors' guidebooks of museums or galleries in the UK. It also runs a small workshop about non-profit tourism industries marketing.
Great.
So after visiting there, we have to use research methods, such as telephone interviews, questionnaires on the street, or sending out emails.
Actually, we don't have a choice. We have to send the email.
Right, we don't have to waste time deciding among them. By the way, how do we get the responses?
Let's contact the London Museum's Information Centre. Actually, it may be helpful to us to collect data through our head course leader.
How many people do we have to interview?
Well, we have to split into 3 groups. And it looks like we have to interview 30 people for each group.
So 90 altogether then. It depends on the ages too, right?
That's right.
So are they all the requirements?
Yes, looks like it.
Firstly, which part are we going to choose? My preference would be a modern art gallery, since that's where I spend most of the time.
I think you've got something wrong. I don't think there are abundant differences in the exhibitions there. I mean, you get young and old, man and woman, amateur and professional, all going to the galleries.
Right, so let's make it a ceramic exhibition then.
So basically, what 2 groups will we compare and contrast for that?
Male and female?
Absolutely. Also, most of my respondents like the same ceramics as me. Also, I think different age groups could be changed to highlight differences.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at the questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
I think you're right. I'll take some comment. The age groups are teenagers, 20s, 30s, 40s and over. What do you think about this?
Great. That will give us more detail.
So how about the kind of ceramic they like? Let's give them some options and then we can just tick boxes.
OK, let's have Asian, European, African. What else? Something special?
Well, we should include the Incas in Peru. Some people like this style, you know.
OK. And then we should know about their understanding of ceramics.
They can learn about that thanks to a gallery curator who can inform them about the patterns and markings through picture and local clay.
I'm curious about how they were made. I mean a process with painting and things embedded on the surface. At that time, the equipment and materials were not good, compared with the present day.
I agree. We should also include an earthen vessel, of course.
Right. The next step could be about where they were actually from.
They were made from local clay, weren't they? Things such as mountain, lake, basement and so forth.
I think so. One more thing is the colour on the bottle. How did the ancients get the tone?
On the internet, it said they got it through dried plants. They were working again to make a tone, drying and sorting.
OK, I see.
To get more hard tone, they included other strong herbs or something.
At that time, the colours were used by the rich with property.
Great. You've got plenty of data, David.
No. It's just beginning. We have to look for something special with more details and history for the presentation next week.
The end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You'll hear part of a lecture given by a waste recycle management's professor. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer the questions 31 to 40.
Hi everyone. This morning I'm going to talk to you about flea markets in England. At first we were surprised to learn that only 15% of people here in England make an effort to collect waste. That is lower than other European countries. Also, it might be falling within a couple of years' time unless the government makes a severe regulation for industries and local residences. The UK government's target means that by 2012 we must decrease our waste emissions by 45% compared with 2000. Local councils can offer support to meet that target by taking part in the National Green Campaign and investing in local flea markets. Most of all, these markets reduce waste emissions from landfill sites. A flea market, or swap meet, is a type of bazaar where very cheap or second-hand goods are sold or bartered for. It may be indoors, like in a warehouse or school gymnasium, or it may be outdoors, like in a field or under a tent. The flea market vendors display the goods used on the table for selling, such as a few unwanted household items to operate commerce, including a variety of used living products. Many flea markets in European countries have food vendors who sell snacks and drinks to the visitors, and may be part of a small event such as carnivals or concerts. As part of our research, our team carried out a questionnaire with people in the local area. The results said we need to open more second-hand shops. However, one problem is that there is a lack of information and marketing. To solve the problems, local councils should invest and support in flea markets by doing things like creating parking space, organising security, public promotions using the internet and other resources. We were also surprised to discover how waste such as furniture, computers, kitchen tools, and other such things are reused. And wooden furniture or electronic products are easy to recycle because they can be reused over and over again without becoming weaker. Around 3 million electronic goods are thrown away per year. Also, around 500,000 pieces of furniture are also disposed of. Only 1/5 is collected and fortunately recycled through many local flea markets. In 2009, there were around 3,000 flea markets in England. The number is increasing steadily so far. Surprisingly, by collecting under 15% of old books, lots of paper is imported, so more paper can be recycled in the UK. Europe recycles 50% of its paper, and Germany recycles 80% of its paper. When recycling launched, there were quality problems, so it was so hard to reuse paper in office sheets. However, these problems have now been solved, and Union of the Flea Markets based in East London produces high-quality recycled paper. Another union, Loving Paper, currently sells the paper that has been through a sorting process to farmers or gardeners as fertilizer. So, to sum up, there seems to be a number of activities that enable people to reuse waste, but the substantial problem is encouraging people to think twice about taking their waste to a flea market instead of throwing it away. I think the recycling program will make us save materials and protect the environment in future. And next, I'll show the plan for promoting it.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
I don't really know what comes next. I'm just doing my best, even though I'm so stressed out. Everything just feels like a test that I fail, so depressed when I can't seem to get out.